The Utah Jazz had one of the more impressive off seasons that's not being talked about enough and are going to be a surprise team this upcoming season. There's not a lot of people out there predicting the Jazz to make the playoffs, but I'm here to tell you that's a mistake because this Jazz team has the depth and talent to make some real noise, and there's some other things to consider on why this Utah Jazz team is going to be good. Let's take a look at some of the moves that happened this offseason. The first one was the trade for John Collins, which was basically for nothing. The Atlanta Hawks have been trying to trade John Collins for like 3 years, and the Utah Jazz end up making the trade for John Collins for Rudy Gay and a protected second-round pick in the future. That means they got rid of their worst rotation player, and they also may not even have to give up the second-round pick. It's almost as if the Hawks gave John Collins to the Jazz just to get rid of him. Now, there's some questions about John Collins' health. He had a finger issue that doesn't look like it's quite gotten better. But John Collins, if he gets back to what he's doing, is a 40% three-point shooter. He is a highlight reel at the power forward position. And it's another opportunity for John Collins to show what he can do. The guy can absolutely cram it. And on this Jazz team that shares the ball in an offense that's easy to pick up and understand with a good coach like Will Hardy, John Collins has a chance to be an absolute breakout player. Last season, Lauri Markkanen was the most improved player of the season. It's possible that this season, that could be John Collins. Could you imagine if the Jazz have the most improved player on their team 2 seasons in a row? Well, it's definitely possible if John Collins has a breakout year. The next thing you got to look at is the re-signings. The biggest re-signing for the Jazz was they brought back Jordan Clarkson, who it wasn't clear if he was going to come back. They get him on a reasonable contract, and it just adds to the depth of this team. And that's really the story of this Utah Jazz team, with their depth at every position, but especially at the guard. And that's something they've got to figure out. They have Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Ochai Agbaji. There's a lot of questions and a lot of decision making that Will Hardy's going to have to do. But having this depth means that over an 82-game season, including the new in-season tournament, the Jazz have the depth to overcome injuries and anything that comes along. Let's take a look at who the Jazz drafted. In this draft, they absolutely hit a home run on Keyonte George. Keyonte George in the summer league, before he turned his ankle, looked like an absolute steal, scoring 30 points, 10 assists in his first Las Vegas game. He was putting up numbers in every single game he was in, and had he not turned his ankle, was likely going to be Summer League MVP. He showed that he might be the steal of this NBA draft. Before the college season even happened, people were expecting Keyonte George to be a top 5, top 8 pick. But because he had a disappointing season, he had an injury, he was heavier, he played out of position at Baylor, he really dropped. The Jazz get him at 16, and now he's looking like a top 5 pick again. So the Jazz might have hit a home run at number 16, and then we haven't even seen them play Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh. Bryce Sensabaugh, who was predicted to go around 20, the Jazz get him at 31, and they get Taylor Hendricks at 9, who we haven't even seen. Both Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks were not playing because of injury, but if those two players can hit, this Jazz team has an incredible level of depth and will have some difficult decisions come trade deadline. Do they want to move some players to open up more time for these young players, or do they just want to play the depth game? We'll see what happens. We've already talked about it. The players they lost were Rudy Gay and Udoka Azubuike. Basically, the story of this Jazz team is they only got better. They didn't lose anyone of value. Sorry, Rudy Gay, you're not good anymore. All they did was get better. The biggest thing they're going to have to overcome is deciding what they do at the guard position with so many guards, and how do they get time to every player on this team, because you can bet some of the young players are going to want time, the veterans are going to want time. It's up to Will Hardy to figure out how to make this whole team happy while everyone's going for playtime. It's going to be the hardest thing for Will Hardy to decide. So who's the starting lineup going to be for this team? I think this changes by the game for the Jazz because they're so deep, and I think there's going to be a lot of situations where they may play someone over someone else depending on the matchup. But I think the day one starting lineup, if we're just picking the best players available come day one, you're probably looking at Colin Sexton starting at point guard. He played last year, played well, showed that he's overcome his injury. He can pass the ball a little bit more. I think he's going to start. If he doesn't, he'll be a high-level 6-man. Either way, Colin Sexton is going to get a lot of minutes, and so if I'm betting what the Jazz do at point guard, it's likely going to be Colin Sexton day one. Shooting guard is likely going to be Jordan Clarkson. We saw that he could really move the ball last year. He has a chance to really show that he's gotten even better, and Jordan Clarkson is just the second best option at guard. So you're going to have Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, two players that aren't pure point guards. The Jazz are just in need of players that can handle the ball, and Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson can do that for them. Lauri Markkanen, who was the best best player for the Jazz last season is obviously going to be at small forward. He is already crushing it in FIBA play for Finland, just like he did last season. He's going to come into this year and he's likely going to be an all-star again. And this season is going to be interesting. Lauri Markkanen might become all-NBA. Can he get to that level? I think he will be, because he should have gotten all-NBA last year, but because he rested multiple games last year when the Jazz were trying to lose, that probably hurt him getting all-NBA. Power forward is going to be John Collins. I think this is going to be an interesting thing to watch with Taylor Hendricks, but come day one, John Collins is going to start, and if his shooting comes back and his athleticism is still there like we all expect, he has a chance to be one of the best pickups this offseason, and like we said, the Jazz got him for nothing. And finally, Walker Kessler, who's playing for Team USA right now, comes in at center. He had a breakout year last year, gets number 3 in Rookie of the Year voting, and he has a chance to improve on that. With a year under his belt, he knows he's a high-level player in the NBA. He knows he belongs, and you're just going to see Walker Kessler get better and better and better. And he was already really good last year. His impact on the floor was immediate, and now he's just going to get better. After a year of all-rookie play, expect Walker Kessler to get some votes for Defensive Player of the Year. Finally, what's the trade that might happen this offseason? At some point this season, we're going to see Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton traded. Those two players are pretty redundant. If you're a championship level team and you have Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton on your team, those guys are likely going to be a sixth man type player. Jordan Clarkson, sixth man of the year winner. That's the role they probably want Jordan Clarkson playing. And that's the role that Colin Sexton played a lot last year. Even when the Jazz weren't great, they had Colin Sexton as their sixth man. So it likely shows you that that's what Colin Sexton will be. And we've seen rumors about Colin Sexton possibly being available for trade. They definitely haven't said he's unavailable. So one of those two players could likely be traded at trade deadline this year to open up space, because we saw what Keyonte George did in Summer League. And if Keyonte George plays like he did in Summer League in his time on the floor this season, he is going to demand more and more and more minutes. And that means possible trades to open up room for him. Now, Danny Ainge doesn't make a trade unless he thinks it's a good trade for the team he's managing. So if he doesn't get a trade that he thinks is fair value for Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson, then he's not going to make the trade. But that doesn't matter, because this day and age, the Utah Jazz have Will Hardy coaching. We already know that Will Hardy will change his lineups to win games. And if Will Hardy thinks that Keyonte George starting wins you games, then that's what he's going to do. And that's one of the things I love about Will Hardy. He's not afraid to make changes like that. Finally, what's the prediction for the end of the season? I think this Utah Jazz team is going to surprise a lot of people with their depth and talent and coaching. They have a most improved player candidate in John Collins. They have Lauri Markkanen, who likely can make all-NBA this year if he takes another step, which is very likely. And then you have potential Rookie of the Year type players in Taylor Hendricks and Keyonte George. This Utah Jazz team is going to be really good. It wasn't that long ago they were number 1 in the Western Conference their first month of the season, and I think this Jazz team is going to figure things out and be really good. Will they miss someone like Mike Conley, who is setting up players on offense? Yes, the playmaking is the biggest question for this team, but they have so much talent, so much size. They have players that have a second year now with Will Hardy, along with high-level rookies, and Will Hardy has shown he's a coach of the year type coach. This Jazz team's going to be really good. Don't be surprised if they're a top 6 seed in the playoffs. Guys, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Shout out to the All-Stars. If you want to join the channel, I would really appreciate it. I will talk to you next time.